Week 12 of the NFL season is upon us today. I got my 3 favorite picks plus 2 extra leans. Before I dive into those, let's talk about how last week's video did. It went 2-1. We had the Patriots and Texans and Cowboys. 2 of those picks do hit. Now on Thanksgiving, yesterday as I record this, we had 2 and 3 day. Not the best, not the worst. Certainly had some bad breaks in there, but either way, we're diving back in this week. If you want my favorite parlays and player props, that video live on Saturday evening. I'll have that linked at the end once it is live then. And as always, if you are new to the Call and Our Shot channel, do me a favor, go down below, hit that subscribe button, hit that like button too. Also, if you want our favorite college football picks for Saturday, you can check those out. I'm on a 7-1 run in college football. Not too shabby. Now let's waste no more of your time. Week 12's here. Let's dive in. In my first pick, I'm going to go with the Jacksonville Jaguars, taking them +4, -110 on FanDuel as they take on the Baltimore Ravens. The Jaguars are at home, and if this goes to 3.5, I've seen 3.5, 4 on some books. I'm fine with that as well. Now, let's talk about these two teams. The 7-3 Ravens are traveling to the 3-7 Jaguars, inverse records. Now, the Ravens, they're winners of 4 straight games, but let's be honest, if you're a Ravens fan out there, it hasn't been pretty. Last week, they won a 13-3 game against the Panthers. It was very ugly, and the offense is struggling. Now, the Jaguars, they started the season, everyone was like, oh, this team is legit. And then they went into October and lost 5 games in October. It was a month to forget. In November so far, 1-1. They had their bye week last week. I expect them to be engaged and motivated this week. And basically they lose one more game. They're kind of out of it for the playoffs, but they could still make a run. And they have the talent to do so. I don't think the talent gap between these two teams is as far as the records indicate. 4 games. I mean, the Ravens defense hasn't been really great this season. It's been better as of late, but still the 6th most passing yards allowed in the NFL. And Trevor Lawrence continues to improve each and every week. Lamar Jackson obviously going to be the best athlete and player on the field, but ultimately his wide receivers are still banged up. Bateman injured. Demarcus Robinson had a good week last week. He's injured, and Mark Andrews is getting back, and he's doing well, but I just think the Jags got a good chance in this one at home. The Jags haven't been great against the spread this season, 3-7, so I feel like that record's going to even out more so towards the end of the year, and I think this game comes down to third downs. Who wins? Who wins on third? Who can get the opposing offense off the field? And right now, the Ravens, 2nd in the league in terms of third down percentage allowed. Can this Jaguars team convert third downs? And I think they can. Trevor Lawrence completing over 65% of his passes. They have a decent run game with Travis Etienne really bursting onto the scene over the last 4 or 5 weeks. So I think the Jaguars play this one tough. It is basically like a win or you're basically done kind of game. Coming off their bye, I think they play pretty well. +4, I think is too many points. I think they keep this game within a field goal, maybe lose on a Justin Tucker walk-off or something like that. I think 4 is a little bit too many points. I like it at +3.5. Jaguars, +4 is my first pick of the week. Now, let's keep it moving to my second pick, a rematch of a playoff game we saw last year, the Bengals and Titans. And I'm taking the Bengals, the road team, -2.5 as they take on the Tennessee Titans. Now, this I was considering the money line, but I don't want to lay -145 on it. It has gradually, as the week kind of went on, kind of moved towards the Bengals side, and I'm fine with laying the 2.5 points. I think they win at least by 3. Now, the last time we saw these teams was in the AFC divisional round. We saw the Titans sack Joe Burrow, I think 9 times, and they still walked away with a loss. The Bengals got it done, moving on, obviously, to the conference championship before they won and went to the Super Bowl. But I like this matchup a large part for the Bengals because of the passing game that they have. The Bengals are averaging, the 4th most passing yards in the NFL this season, and the Tennessee secondary has been brutal. So I don't know what the player props will get for Sunday's game in this game, but I wouldn't be surprised if you see me taking a Bengals wide receiver, whether it's Jamar Chase or not. Jamar Chase is questionable. We'll see if he plays. You might already know by the time you're watching this video if Jamar Chase is going to play or not, but either way, I don't think it's a deal breaker if he's out there or if he's inactive. I think this Titans defense giving up the 3rd most passing yards in the league. We've seen teams be able to throw all over this team, and the Titans rush defense is great, 2nd fewest rushing yards per game. However, the Bengals offensive line in the rushing at the game has been non-existent almost all year long. Joe Mixon, who's questionable, has a concussion. I don't expect him to play. If he does, great, but P. Ryan's decent. Travion Williams, I believe, is their 3rd string guy. Look, those guys can't be playing worse than Mixon. Mixon's averaging very low, like 3-something yards per carry. They're really struggling. So if they can get any sort of juice, and maybe a backup gives them that. A guy with fresh legs in week 12 might be able to give them a burst off the scene. Either way, they had 30 rushing yards from P. Ryan last week was their leading rusher. They threw for over 350 yards. It's a team that wants to throw the football, and they're going to be able to do it against the Titans secondary that has really struggled. Now, the Bengals defense is going to have to hold it down, but they're decent. They're not necessarily the best in the league, definitely far from the worst. They're 10th in total yards allowed, 13th in passing yards allowed. 17th in rushing yards allowed. It comes down to the rushing yards because we know Derrick Henry and the Titans are coming and they're going to want to run the football. Last week we saw the Bengals give up 90 rushing yards to Najee Harris and 2 touchdowns. They're going to need to tighten up, and they got good safeties, Jesse Bates and Von Bell, 2 guys not afraid of tackling, and that's what sometimes has to come down to. When Derrick Henry gets past the offensive line, you're going to need those secondaries and linebacker to be willing to tackle, and those guys are willing to do it. I think they can at least keep this game close, and I potentially probably win this one outright. I like the Bengals. I think they're favored for a reason on the road. They haven't played as well on the road, but I think people just have gotten too used to taking the Titans as underdogs against the spread. We took them last week. They got it done for us, but I just don't see their 8-2 against the spread record continuing this season, at least this week. I think they moved to 8-3. I like the Bengals on the spread. Also like them on the money line. Not sure I'll include them in my money line parlay on Saturday's video, but I do like the Bengals minus the 2.5 points. So for my third and final pick, before we move on to 2 leans, which have been doing really well, taking the Tampa Bay Buccaneers minus 3.5. It's currently plus 100 on Caesars as they go to Cleveland to take on the Browns. Now, obviously, much better to take this at minus 3, and if it does go to that at kickoff, good, take that. But I'll take the plus 100. I think the Bucs can win this game by 4 or more points. Now, could the Buccaneers have finally found a groove? They obviously were not the greatest team in the world a couple weeks back, but they've won 2 straight games, went into their bye week, and the receivers are getting healthy. Julio Jones is finally looking decent. Chris Godwin, Mike Evans, those guys are all healthy. And Rachaad White's kind of burst onto the scene. Leonard Fournette has not been running the football all too well. Rachaad White and Lenny are a formidable duo. They're still struggling on the ground, but maybe they get something going. Maybe they found some sort of something that will work in their bye week because they've done nothing on the ground. We'll talk about that in a second. Now, Jacoby Brissett and the Browns, Deshaun Watson should be returning any day now, but he's returned to practice, but I don't think he returns until next week. But the Browns are still 3-7, and we know they want to run the football with Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt. I just trust Todd Bowles and that defense of the Buccaneers to come up with a game plan to say, you know what, Jacoby Brissett, go out there and beat our secondary. And Brissett did well last week. Amari Cooper, they still lost. They had a good day, but they still lost by 8 to the Buffalo Bills. And the Buccaneers defense, while it hasn't been great so far this season in terms of rushing yards, they normally are like top 2-3 in the league. They're around 15 or 16. They still have the talent, and they're getting healthier, and that's what you can hope to see. The Buccaneers secondary has actually been pretty solid, 6th fewest passing yards allowed in the NFL, and the Browns defense, let's be honest, it's been terrible. They're the reason where they're losing a lot of games. They're giving up a ton of points, almost 30 points per game. They're giving up the 3rd most points per game, the 10th most rushing yards per game. And this is a Buccaneers rushing attack that has been non-existent. Tom Brady's had to do everything. He's going into second downs, normally second and long. That's because he doesn't get any production on the ground. Tampa averaging 70.3 rushing yards per game, last in the NFL. So if they can get any sort of production against the Browns defense that hasn't been very good on the ground, I think they got a good chance. I mean, this is Brady, any production on that. If you can get him into 3rd and short, I think he'll be able to dink and dunk his way down the field. The Buccaneers 3-6-1 against the spread. I just feel like at the end of the day, a lot of teams will finish in the 45 to 55-ish range of covering. The fact that they're 3-6-1, only covering in 3 of 10 games, I think they get back to it. Brady's been great after a bye. I think they stay above 500, beat this Browns team by at least 4 or more points. I'm not sold on the Browns as a team as a whole. Give me the Buccaneers minus the 3.5 points for my 3rd and final pick of the week. But let's talk about 2 leans. The leans have been crushing it. 9-1 over the last 5 weeks. They were 8-0 prior to last week. Went 1-1. Let's talk about this first one. Texans plus 14 as they take on the Dolphins. Now, sportsbooks, they know what they're doing. They know people are going to go out there and bet the Dolphins. 14-point favorites, the Dolphins. Yeah, sure. I'll put Dolphins in every single money line parlay, even though it's not worth it throwing them in a money line parlay. Look, the Texans, if you were to put this game 2 weeks ago, the spread's probably 7.5 at best, at the most. But I think you're seeing, this line's overinflated because the books know they can do it. The Texans are 1-8-1. Only one of their losses come by more than 14 points. That was to the Raiders by 18. And the Dolphins are 7-3, coming off their bye, looking good. Well, only one of their wins was by 2+ scores. The Dolphins' defense has struggled. And while, yes, I know the Texans' offense isn't great, they will be starting likely Kyle Allen, a backup quarterback, because Davis Mills has been stinking it up. But I don't want to put any money on the Texans. That's why it's just a lane. I lost by them last week. But you also got to look at the Dolphins. Who's coming up on their schedule? San Francisco 49ers, Mike McDaniel's old team, obviously where he was the offensive coordinator, I believe. Could they be overlooking a Texans team? I'm not saying they lose outright. That would be crazy. But beating a team by 14 in the NFL is not as easy as it sounds. It's tough. All these teams are more or less somewhat equal. It's just sometimes you get better breaks. The Dolphins are better than the Texans, but it's any team can win on any given Sunday. That's why the NFL is electric. So I wouldn't be surprised if the Texans do keep this one close. 14 points is a ton of points to lay. It's just a lean. Won't track towards my record, but I do like the Texans. And then for my last lean, going to the Panthers, the Carolina Panthers, it is plus 2.5. You can take them on the money line if you want, but you got the wrong guy if you think I'm coming out here and betting on the Broncos. And while this is just a lean, I don't really want to lose any of my hard-earned money on a team like the Panthers and the Broncos, one of the worst matchups ever. If you could flex, they sometimes flex like Sunday afternoon games to Sunday night. If you could flex this game, flex it out. Just cancel it all together. These games stink. But ultimately, I like the Panthers for a couple reasons. Number one, Panthers are at home. They're 3-3 at home, straight up. 0-5 on the road, and the Broncos have struggled in general, 1-4 on the road. But Sam Darnold is starting. Darnold hasn't started a game all year long. I don't even think he's completed a pass, even thrown a pass. Can't be worse than Baker Mayfield and PJ Walker. And Darnold is actually playing for a lot here. He's got a lot of money on the line here. While he's probably going to be a free agent this offseason, he's got millions of dollars on the line. If Darnold goes out here, plays well from this game and the rest of the season, he's going to earn himself a big payday. Now, he might just be a backup quarterback, but as the former third overall pick has something to prove, and he hasn't played all season long. I think he has something here. And the Panthers want to run the football. The Broncos' run defense, not very good. The Broncos' defense is legit tied to their secondary. Secondary is very good, although they got burnt by Devontae Adams. He started talking all this smack last week to Pat Surtain. But I think this Broncos run defense is not good. The Panthers want to run the football. It's an ugly game. I wouldn't tie up any of my money on it, but I think the Panthers, I don't think they should be that big of underdogs. It should be a pick 'em. The fact you can get them at plus 2.5 for even value, or even plus 115 on the money line, despite them being the home team, I lean the Panthers. It's going to be ugly. It's just a lean, but those two leans were pretty ugly. But those are my two leans. Those are my three official picks. As always, our parlays and player props video will be live Saturday evening. If it is already live, link down the screen and go click that here. Go see my favorite player props parlays. We've actually cashed our money line parlay 2 straight weeks. Let's see if we can go for our third. Drop my favorite picks for Sunday. And I appreciate you guys for tuning in. Thank you guys again. This is Austin. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace out.